Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Wine Women and Words. And as always, we have Michelle.
Hello.
And our guest this evening is Constance Sayers, and she's here to talk to us about her book, The Star and the Strange Moon. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me back. I'm glad.
It's always a pleasure, but I do feel that we need to give the warning that Michelle, we're going to have to up it to 10 because we're already at the 5. So on your
for the
10th visit,
visits.
yeah, you're gonna get a punch card.
I'd
And
love
on your
that.
10th visit, we come to you.
I love that.
So
I'm gonna
I
get
know
writing. I'm getting immediately.
I know it's that started as a joke so long ago, and now we really do have authors. We started with 5. You come on the show 5 times. The next time we come to you, and we're getting several authors now. We're hitting like the 4th or 5th time, and it's like, okay, so it's time to start planning some travel because we've talked about this so much. We have to actually follow through now.
So hopefully it's somewhere fun. Hopefully they're like writers living in Hawaii and Alaska and cool places.
It looks like Massachusetts. We're
gonna okay,
be...
that's fun.
I'm okay with that too.
I'm totally fun. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm currently trying to talk Michelle into just getting our families together, going 50-50 on an Airbnb this summer, and we have
and just road trip it.
Yeah,
great.
Well, it's easy to fly out too, and we just do some interviews with the podcast and knock out that 5th one, and maybe get a few others. See some friends on the East Coast, and we're good to go. So,
well, at the pace I'm going, though, I might, you might be coming to Washington, D.C. because I don't know. I mean, I've done 3 books in 4 years, so it's been a maddening pace.
That is a really high speed.
It has been a high speed. So I don't know. Now I have a goal.
Now we get to go to DC. I love DC. I'd love to go back to DC.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
All right.
All right. So yes, we have to just schedule you for the next 3 books. Just kind of always keep that in the back of your head.
Absolutely,
that Wine Women and Words. So now, of course, we're here to talk about The Star and the Strange Moon. For our, this book comes out in 2 weeks.
Yes, November 14th.
So you're getting close to debut time. Are there a lot of events lined up, or?
Yeah, I've been a lot of podcasts, and then the big launch event is which is really sweet, at my hometown bookstore, Old Town Books, which has turned out to be a fairly large bookstore in Old Town Alexandria. It's like the main bookstore so I'm actually just south of Washington, D.C. in Old Town Alexandria, and so doing that, and then having a little party afterwards. So that's great. I know, yeah, but it's really, really nice to have it. I mean, I can walk to my bookstore, so it's great.
That's the dream.
Yeah, it really is.
Is there a coffee shop that you can walk to too?
Totally, there is. I mean, it's really like the perfect little town. It's because you get the adjacency to Washington, but you really feel like you're in like Charleston. It's got that spooky history. Everything's old, and all these old cobblestone streets and everything. It's really got charm about it. So
we're definitely coming to you then.
Definitely, yes.
So for our listeners who aren't yet familiar with your new book, can you give us an overview of what it's about?
Yeah. So it takes place in 1968. It's a down on her luck kind of actress by the name of Gemma Turner, and she has had some measure of success, but no one's calling for her anymore, and so she's really got no other options for her career, and she gets one offer, which is to go and do a new wave horror film in France by this like kind of darling film director of the time named Thierry Valdon. And so she takes it, and it's a horror film. And I think like the Hammer films of like 1960s, 1970s with Christopher Lee. And it's very over the top, very kind of campy. And so she's like, I'll take it. Like he's going to do something very different. He's doing a new wave kind of take on this. She goes to, on the set is a disaster. And in the middle of filming, she gets sucked inside the film. And so she turns around, there's no film crew there anymore, and she's basically in an 1878 Gothic horror film set that she's living out. So, and she's got vampires coming to dinner. So it's like that whole kind of like, so it becomes a little bit, it's like she's obviously like trying to get home. What happened? What's going on? How can she get home? But it plays on the fact that like she's aware of the script. She knows the script. She knows it is a script, but she is having to kind of like these bit characters, she turns into major characters, and she like bends the script to get herself home if she can get home. And so, and then in the meantime, there's a young boy who his mother goes crazy at the sight of her picture, because she has been, as an actress in like modern day, she's been missing for 40 years. And she went missing on the set. No one ever saw it, never knew what happened to her. So you have like a modern day character who, as a young child, his mother just completely flips out at the sight of her photo and destroys it, and then never recovers from it. And as a result, he is traumatized by this and really drawn to the mystery of what happened to this actress and connecting it to his mother. And that propels him on to try and find out what happened to Gemma Turner. And so it's dual timeline, modern day. And then really what's happening is you've got the Gemma Turner storyline inside a Gothic mansion. So it's definitely got like Gothic, historic, haunted, creepy mansion kind of thing, because that's basically where the setting of the film was. So it's got vampires, it's got everything, it's got something for everybody.
Gotta love those spooky, creepy vibes.
But it's fun. It is funny. Like she knows that she's in a film, and then she starts getting director's notes, and she has to start doing retakes. So she'll have to retake a scene again and again. So you see multiple outcomes of like different things until she moves on. So it's very aware of itself. And so in that regard, it's, and there's humor to that, but there is like kind of, it's got seriousness and it's got humor.
So it's interesting because I'm still in the book. I'm not quite halfway through reading it yet. But one of the things, I found interesting in the story is normally when we come across anything that is movie related, we always set it in Hollywood. That's kind of like the norm, it seems like, when it comes to anything movie related. But this is set in France.
Yeah.
What was your thought process for setting it there?
Well, originally when my agent had said to me, like book 3, what is it? I was calling it the Jack Pickford Project. Mm-hmm. And I was really planning on doing exactly what you were saying. With A Witch in Time, my first novel, I did Hollywood in the 1930s, and I'm in love with that period of time. I think it is it's got like mysteriousness. It's the kind of the 1930s, the genesis of film, 20s and 30s, and you've got this whole idea about like, can a film steal your soul, which a lot of people kind of felt like, in the early, you have a lot of cultures and a lot of who felt that like photography or films could like steal your soul. And I had that in the back of my head. And I love that period of time because you have like Thomas Ince, William Desmond Taylor, Thelma Todd, you have Olive Thomas, all of these people died mysteriously. And there's just this lore about Hollywood in that period of time. So I'm a little bit obsessed with that period of time. But as I was going on, I ran into a picture of Francois d'Orléac, who is the sister of Catherine Deneuve. And she died rather tragically in 1967. And that started sending me just a different path, which was, kind of the more, in the 60s, I was interested in film. And then I was, watching kind of like, I wanted this like Gothic kind of thing. And I was like, well, I could set it in Hollywood, or I could like, I don't know, there's like something about like Roger Vadim and like, Jane Fonda. And it started pulling me more toward a 1960s setting. And that just started to snap into place. Every time I turned around, it was like something else from the 1960s, something else, and I was just like, okay, this is a little different. And I thought it might be fresh, honestly. And so I was like, okay, let's go this direction. And so that was really, what happened to it. It really started out being set in Hollywood. And so it migrated as ideas, I do kind of let that happen as it just starts. But I did want to anchor it in modern day. So I did like the idea of having kind of some modern day person kind of, pulling the thread to keep the story going, and to keep it kind of not a thriller, but I mean, people have said it definitely has thriller. Like he will, as the tension kind of goes on, he's got to find her. And, you have like a cult film, you've got, kind of a secret society based around it. It really does check a lot of boxes. So, and romance. It's got a lot of romance. At the end of it, I think it is a love story, a story of love, and a story of love, and a story of obsession.
So one of the things, well, there's many things we can unpack about this book, and we on the show, Diane and I, usually we try to take turns reading the books, because if we were reading a book every week,
right,
we would have no time to adult. So Diana's reading your book this week, but I am anxiously waiting for November 14th to come so I can get my own copy and read it, because I just love the concept for some reason. And I'm sure it's been done before, but I love the concept of the character being sucked into the film versus like, a film character coming out or a book character escaping the book. The idea of your character going into their own work of fiction.
right.
I just love that idea.
And I mean, I really love where I've seen it done, and I really liked it was a miniseries called Lost in Austin. And it really was great. And it is where, modern day woman is like, oh, there are no great men here. If only I had Mr. Darcy. And Elizabeth, she finds in her shower, there's a secret passageway in her shower, and Elizabeth Bennet comes out. She's like, oh God, I need to get out of here. And you got to go in there. So they switch places, and she basically screws up, the book. And, and so I definitely I was like, oh, that's an interesting, I really enjoyed that. I was like, that's kind of funny. And, I thought, okay, can you apply that to like something else that's like, a horror film? I mean, how horrible to be like, you're an actress, that, and then here you are in a creepy mansion, and you're like, and for the first, she's like running around looking for telephones and phone lines hidden, and she's like, are you all playing a joke on me? And then she realizes something weird has happened. And so so she is, and she's aware. And then it's like, then the letter comes for the, announcing that that her cousins, who are, who turn out to be the villains, that they are coming to stay. And she's like, well, I can't have these people. I mean, I know the outcome. And so it's a matter of, and and it's 1878. So she has little power. She's a woman. She's and so there is just this like, a child of the 60s being confronted with the fact that she's basically inside a Gothic mansion in 1878. I mean, it's got so many conflicts that are really, I do try to play with them, and it is funny. So it's probably the funnier book I've read, but I mean, I think it has at the end of it a very tender bend to it. It was a few folks on Goodreads, I loved it. Be like, this is the weirdest book I've ever read. But I like it. But it's like it kind of, and I guess that is the case. But I mean, yeah, I think it probably is weird, but I think it's kind of fun weird. I think it's like go along for the ride.
There's something to be said about being able to read a weird book, because no, it's true, because you get into this cookie cutter, every book is going to be marketed this certain way, and everything. I think Michelle and I were talking about one specifically where I'm like, okay, this is going to end up being a genre, because all of these other authors are like marketing this book this same way.
Right.
And then somebody like you come out with a book, then people are like, it's weird, but I like it. But that's like a wonderful thing to have something that's like different.
It's like thriller horror, I mean, and I've run away a little bit from horror, because anybody who is, if you really are into horror, this is not gonna, it doesn't meet it doesn't check the boxes it needs to check on a horror book. So like, I've been really resistant. I've been like, hey, that is not what this book is. It takes place on a horror film, but that doesn't, but it's a gothic fantasy, historic, and it's got a historical fantasy bend to it. And it's just, it's like kind of like the dreamy things I kind of like to write. I mean, my last book was about, a circus in hell that, you had, Mussolini as the circus monkey who was the manager. I mean, like, I don't know where this stuff comes from in my head. I really don't. I mean, I do numbers all day at my day job. So, I mean, maybe that's what it is.
Your brain
I
is
don't know.
finally rebelling, like, no more numbers, thank God.
Yeah. So
We're gonna go as far opposite as we possibly can after 5 p.m.
it really is. And in fact, tomorrow I'm teaching a course for Orbit, my publisher for Orbit Red Hook. They're doing a series on like how to write a sci-fi fantasy novel. And each one of us have taken like a section.
Cool.
I'm doing setting. So, and of course I'm doing setting, because like, I mean, that is like what, I mean, like all the different, like, hell, Paris, I mean, all in one book. And, so, I mean, it's definitely something that is really, setting is very important to me. I mean, I think, the idea that you can really use it and make it a character and make it like, and make a gorgeous setting kind of come to life and have meaning and purpose, I think is something that I'm pretty passionate about. So anyway, so that's definitely, something that, I'm doing tomorrow, which is teaching that class, which is going to be fun.
And I love that you brought
sounds
up the fact
awesome.
that setting can be very much a character, because that's so important in novels, that you have those intricate little details as much as possible and create that like vivid world in the reader's imagination.
Right. And I think that, I always start whenever I'm working on, if I'm doing any world building, and I do do some of that for this, I do a lot of like Pinterest. I mean, you can find it. I've got to construct it, and I've got to basically kind of like mood board it out. And I do that generally on Pinterest. If I've got a lot of boards on stuff like that, and I got to see it. Then if I see it and I can visualize it, then I write it. And so, but I've got to kind of get that, like, I have to kind of, so I actually feel like in terms of world building and setting, I generally paint more than I write, if that makes sense. And I think that, setting had the biggest influence in me. The book that made me want to be a writer was Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And I know it's a nonfiction book, but what he did to Savannah, I mean, he put a city on the map with a book. I mean, Savannah was, I'm sure people can argue whether Savannah was probably, better off for that book or not. But I mean, it definitely really put Savannah back on the tourist map for many people because of John Barron's Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And I think it's a wonderful example of setting being a character. But yeah, that's always been something that's every book I have, setting is very, very important. And to also probably to your point, why I didn't end up in Hollywood, I wanted something that was fresh and a little different that people hadn't seen before.
Now, I know for your first 2 books, you time hopped a lot. Like you went through decades and different periods of time. How was it any different, or was it a different writing experience, kind of sticking to 2 particular times through the whole novel, through a dual timeline type of approach for this novel?
So I end up having 3. So I have 1968, I have modern day, and then I have basically, if you consider the Gothic film, which is set in 1878, she basically goes into.
Oh, that's true. That's,
so she does have 3.
Yes.
So I am kind of playing around with that. I will tell you that right now I'm writing, my agent and has tasked me with writing a book that is in linear modern day. And man, that's hard for me. It really is hard. I really want to jump. I think I am a historical novelist at heart, and I really love that interplay between time, and I like to bend it, and I like to, travel across it and travel back in and out of it. And it's been really, I think as a writer too, you want to try things you haven't tried before, and you want to like flex muscles and try things. And so I'm trying this. I don't like it as much, I will say, as I want to put another. I'm like, well, I could stick an 18. I'm like, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. That's not the assignment. You're not allowed to do that. So
I feel like your agent's making you eat your vegetables.
she is making me eat my vegetables a little bit. Yeah. And, and so, and I remember, I turned these ideas into her and they're all like, this is modern day. And then there's this, and she's like, let's go with this one, because I also have been, I will say I twist myself up into knots. These books are complicated. And they, just basically having a very straightforward, linear, narrative is probably good for me right now.
That was a cat.
But this is a lot like my agent, where she's just like, let's think simple story.
Right.
Let's go simple. That's a common thing I hear from my agent.
Your book was so lush though. And I really admire the detail. I mean, like France is like, was such a French history, such an, that it was just a great period of time. I thought it was a beautiful book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I've talked to her about some like other book ideas, and the one that's currently on submission, she has come to me and she has said it's an ambitious novel. And now when we move forward with other books, she's just like, let's look at doing something simple.
Right. No, it's definitely like, because I think she sees me getting like, it's been a long haul when I look at the body of work that I've produced, and I'm very proud of it. And like I said, I think some of them are rare books, and I just think that that's like, I mean, hopefully I've pushed the envelope on some things I've tried, but maybe it's time to just write a story. I mean, I started my first book that did not get. So, I got my agent with a book called Rustic Mornings, which was I actually ended up using the plot for book 2 for Ladies of the Secret Circus, which was a woman whose fiance goes missing on her wedding day. And it was basically the 9 months in a small town after he goes missing until they find out what happened. And it was like a rural noir, gritty kind of, and I just didn't do that as well as like someone like a Steph Post or a Donald Ray Pollock did. I mean, it's just not what I do. And then I had this other idea about like this woman who was traveling through time. And it was never anything that I had ever, but I loved like Anne Rice, and I loved watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I mean, I like what I was watching and reading, I was not writing. And then when I started to, there's a great line that Anne Rice had about like when she turned to fantasy, it like unlocked something in her writing. And I feel that that's very true for my own writing. And it just like burst open a door. It's like another, like, yeah, you can have problems, but if you can have problems and you've got a witch or another time period, like that just like amps it up to a way that like kind of interests me more than not having them. So it really was a game changer for me in terms of my writing.
I can totally see the conversation of the kind of like, the one timeline with your agent and you going, or,
right.
And what if,
yeah. And the book I'm working on right now, The Modern, is about the Grim Reaper. Because I mean, I can't help, I was, and I'm like, oh, but like, I could definitely, and, and she's like, no, please don't do that. So, yeah.
Oh, well, you have to have something.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
God bless agents for putting up with us.
Let
me just say that. I mean, agents put up with a lot from authors, especially when we're like, so I've got this random idea. I know I'm in the middle of this one book that I'm supposed to finish, but I've got this other idea I want to run by you. And they're like, all right, let's hear it out. They'll take like 5 minutes out of the day, read the synopsis, or at least mine does, and it's like, you know what? Let's think about that one. Let's put that needs to be fleshed out more later on.
Yeah, and I'm always, it's always like the book on deck is always the best book ever. You know what I mean? Because I'm not actually reading it. It's like it's just sitting over there. It's like the backup quarterback. It's like, oh, that's the best quarterback. That's the best of all of them. Not the one on the field. And you are just kind of like, God, I'm so sick of this book already, and I haven't even really started it. But so. But it's been like this. Star and Estrangement was very, very difficult. It was probably, I wrestled with it a fair amount, trying to just get the, and I mean, the pacing. I did have to, like, Christopher's character is the character I really went for. Like, it was like, he's slow. It's a slower burn. It's not as fast as some of and I wanted you to care very much about what happens to him. I mean, he, as a 10-year-old boy, watches, his mother has, addiction issues and mental issues, and has a total breakdown in seeing this actress's face, and he does not know why. And she never gets better. And so in his mind, his world has been changed. He has to go live. He has no father. He has to go live with his relatives. And he's always haunted by this woman. And then when he finds out she disappeared mysteriously, he's like, there's a connection. There has to be a connection to what happened to my mother and this woman. And that is what propels the book. And, and then you're seeing what's going on with Gemma, but then you're kind of seeing him put the pieces together. So it does like kind of, I think, operate like a thriller, but I did let it open up and expand with his story, because I really loved his story and I loved him as a character. So
I love that prologue. And for a moment, I was thinking it was a chapter 1 or it was a prologue, but no, it was a prologue. I absolutely adored that prologue. That prologue was so well done.
You're as confused as he is. He's dizzy. And I love the fact that, I mean, he just has these rituals that keep them safe and and they all just get busted apart. And at the end, they hand him a bill, put a bill, and he takes it because he's like, this will be a document that will like matter to me someday. And it's like, $300 for the replacement of Gemma Turner artwork. And that's the first time he gets the name as to who this actress is. And he keeps it with him, well into his college years. And so his obsession kind of like keeps, I'll be interested, Diana, to see if you think there will be things that you'll be like, oh wow, I didn't realize that like will be like, hopefully we'll connect, and it will be a satisfying kind of like, oh wow, like weaving the ending kind of together, because there's stuff that's like, there's surprises coming your way.
Oh boy, I can't wait.
People die, it's
Yeah, we make a point of not finishing the book before our interviews. I know we've said this on the podcast before, but it's a point of, I don't want to give away any spoilers, so we usually cut it off about halfway through. So I'm just shy of the halfway point, because I was like, oh, I'm going to try to finish up some of these other books from earlier in the month that are sitting here in my to be read pile that are like half finished.
Oh my God. And like, I don't know, like when I write, I'm not reading as much because you just can't, and so I do find that like now that I have a little bit of a break, I mean, I'm like, I listen and read at the same time. So I'm listening to one book and I'm like, reading another, and I'm just trying to like pack as much as like stuff that I've missed, because my TBR pile never goes down. And it just so stresses me out.
Oh no, ever.
It doesn't stress me out because somebody had said, you will never, there's so many books that you will never finish them in your lifetime. And that's kind of a comforting thought of, it's never going to finish.
There's
it's
no way
going to end
more. Yeah.
Just go with the flow of it. And for me, we end the podcast at the end of November is our last episode for the year. And so we have December, and that's when I finish reading like all the books. And audiobooks have been so delightful for me, because that's when I can like have a book in the background that if I'm doing something or if I'm driving, I have that going. So I have a story that I can listen to. But I've also found for me that when it comes to while I'm writing, I have to take a day to read. Like I have to take a day off of writing.
That's really great. That's really, really great, because I don't, I don't tend to do that, and I think you do get kind of, and then I feel disconnected from like what other people are writing. I'm like, God, I haven't read that, and then you just kind of feel, like I feel like I'm out of touch with what's kind of going on, which is really bad.
And in some ways, it feels like a part of my writing practice to be able to read other people's works, because if I'm reading a book that I'm really enjoying, then I'm like, okay, I need to set this down because I need to write. I want to write something that's good. And that helps spur it on. And I don't know, there's something about those creative muses or juices, whatever, what have you, from those books of creative vibes. I think that sounds better. The creative vibes that you're getting from the books is helping your creative vibes to be able to churn, and you're like, oh, I love how the author made this twist with their story. I think I want to do a twist similar to that with this story, with this characters and the scene setting.
Right. Well, Philip Meyer, who wrote The Sun, has this great, I actually have it pinned up somewhere. If he's struggling with character, then he begins reading books about character specifically, like that do what he wants to do. He has I think it's like prescriptive reading or something. So it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like going after those things that, that either whatever you're working on or you as a writer want to do better. He's like, but I think if he's working on something, it's like, okay, I need more of this. Okay, I'm going to read that so that I can kind of kind of come around it. But audiobooks, one thing that I think is just really interesting about audiobooks, this last audiobook, so the Star and the Strange Moon's audiobook, there's such a difference in audiobook, even in the last 2 years. Now I have a whole cast of actors. I mean, not that I have the readers, but now they're more it's it's choose, it just seems like the game is been upped a little bit more in terms of audiobook production, and it's much less about reading the book than it might have been 2 books ago, and more about getting the right actor to actually act the role. So I'm just seeing, and I just saw, was it the episode 13 with Craig DeLuey? I think it's one of his, that's a he's out of orbit as well, and it was totally acted. It was I was like, wow, this is very interesting. So there's a much bigger investment. You mentioned loving audiobooks. I'm just seeing a huge investment in audio production, and it just seems to really be good. I have not listened to the Star and the Strange Moon's audiobook, but I can't wait.
Oh, I love it, too. You also listen to your audiobooks, because I also listen to mine as well.
I do, but it really stresses me out.
Really?
Yeah, because in both, I actually did find a little error in one, and immediately they fixed it. But I don't know, I feel very tense when I'm kind of, it was just, I don't know. It's like watching yourself on camera. I'm like, oh, it's weird, Or I don't know if you have this too. Sometimes I'll be like, huh, wow, that was really I can't believe I did that. There are times where I can't believe I was oh, wow, that's actually really good. Wow.
That happens to me all the time. I've kind of gotten used to it. I'm like, wow, that was a bonehead thing I did. Oh,
well, or somebody will stand up and say oh, with this book, with this character, and just for a second. And I mean, I don't know if you do this too. When I'm done with the book, I am done with it. Oh, out the door. And I'll be oh yeah, that, and usually it's a mind, and I'm oh yeah, that, right. It's 2 books ago, and I just have kind of moved on. So I find sometimes that I've don't remember things like I used to, but
audiobooks are great. So if I'm going to a book club and or I'm going to a talk and we're going to be discussing one of my books, I'll have the audiobook going.
Yes.
Okay. I'll be able to remind myself, oh yeah, this was this character, and then this thing happened here. So that's going on in my brain, so I can refamiliarize myself with the work that I had, because it's no longer in my head. It's out in the world.
Not first and foremost in your head. Yeah. Right.
And then sometimes having the audiobook is good when you're having a rough writing day, or you're feeling down about yourself, because it's, in a lot of ways, it's a learning tool. And maybe this is just my own narcissism.
No,
I don't know.
great.
But it's oh yeah, I really like the way I wrote this. Or and on the flip side, where it's oh, I didn't like the way that I did it this way. For the next book, I'm going to make a note not to do that for if I come across this in the next book. So it's become for me a really good writing tool. So it's kind of while I'm writing a book, I'll listen to the audiobook while I'm writing something.
That's really, yeah. Because I just feel my mind can't be that cluttered. I need to kind of get, if I'm not, focused on it, it's not going to happen just on the page, the blank page. And I am meticulous about I got to crank out 1,000 words a day. I mean, just my day job has made me have to have that kind of discipline. And so there isn't, I'll get off of a call at 5 or 6 o'clock, or generally 6 o'clock, and eat, and then go right and just right. And, and sometimes it's bare bones and not there, but I keep going, and then I go over it. And then when I go over it, it becomes much more, I love that. I don't know about you, but I love that period of writing after you have the first draft and it stinks and it's terrible, but like, it's like creaky and together. And then you start again and you go right over it with editing. And that's really where it starts to kind of like flesh out. And again, I've always said this. I mean, for me, it's like, I'm like a painter. I go over it again and again and again and again. And the biggest thing, I think the biggest just not even frustration, but like, it's just, you're on deadline. And so sometimes you just don't have, like, I would have loved probably another pass or two with Star and Estrangement. You don't get it because you got to keep going on it. So you not only have to write as the best you can, but you have to do it as quickly as you can.
Which can make it so stressful for the writers. That's usually why we're all like hurried and no hair appointments, no beauty appointments. Why we're always in our pajamas, because we're just having to meet these crazy deadlines.
Yeah.
Because we're wanting to get as best of a product out as quickly as possible.
As quickly as you can, yeah. And then you worry like, okay, what sacrifices did I have to make for this? And I'll say another thing too, my editor, she just left Red Hook, but Nivea Evans, she used to do this thing that was really, really great. I really appreciated it. I said, give me the book jacket copy. So she would have the first draft. I'd like, give me the book jacket copy. And she would be like, I'm like, I need your marketing copy. She would send me back after I love this. She would send me back the book jacket copy after having read my first draft to her that I said, which was probably my third or fourth draft, but she finally got it. It was the first time she saw it. And what she sent me back was the book she wanted.
You know what I mean? Oh, that's cool.
And I would take that and I would write to that. And I'd be like, oh, I remember thinking for Ladies of the Secret Circus, I was like, God, if I wrote that book, that'd be really good. But then I saw, like, I think you also have to be a good mimic I was like, okay, I can do that. And then I wrote that back to her, my version of that back to her. It was closer to the vision that she had for the book. But and I just think that was one of the coolest things, that she was able to just nail what I had done, what the book needed to be, and what the market wanted for that book too. I mean, that's another thing too. I mean, you've got to be mindful of what the market wants. And I'm glad that there is such a market and appetite out there for things that are like for Gothic fantasy and things like that, because it's
oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like and it's such a wonderful community, and just great people that like reach out to you, that like, tell you that, that your book meant something to them. I never really thought that like that would ever, I mean, for the years that I struggled to be a writer, I mean, like the first time that happens, you really are moved by that.
Yeah, there's something to be said for when they reach out to you and they say how much they love the book, and it's like, oh, it really does,
because it's lonely and you don't know if it's going to connect. You have no idea what you're putting out to the world, if people are going to like it. You hope. But it's really nice when this one woman sent me this wonderful note. She said, I would read your grocery list. And I was like, that is so kind. And I was
that's
like,
such a wonderful compliment.
It's like, I'm like, that is just so sweet. And thank you so much. And like, when you're having a bad day, I'm like, okay, maybe, like you're, it's like, okay, I'm proud of this. This is something that I put out into the world, and you take risks, and you hope that, it's received well, because it is risky. It's risky to put stuff out in the world.
It is. What was it? Oh, I guess we lost my shoulder. But Ernest Hemingway had said that, putting to write is basically to cut yourself and bleed on the page.
It is so true.
And that's exactly what it feels like sometimes to write. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't write about like myself. Like I do not, like, I'm not writing books that are about myself, but probably Christopher is probably the closest thing that I had to, and not that there's anything autobiographic about it, but like I had lost my mother. My mother had died while I was writing The Star and the Strange Moon. And so you will see that. I mean, you see that him looking for his mother and losing his mother, and, that was definitely something, an emotion that I tapped into. But I really do like to kind of my first novel was just terrible, and it was like about me, and I was 20, and it was all my angst and everything, and no one wanted to read that. When you get out there and you have characters that are not like you, and they're just out in the world, and you have some threads of like things that you like or whatever, but like it was really nice to be free though of your own constraints and your own things, and writing characters that were fresh and unique. But I do agree with Hemingway saying there's vulnerability, and you are bleeding on the page when you are right, because you are hoping that somebody like really like sees what you are, that sees your vision and sees what you're in. And
well, you're definitely putting a piece of yourself into those stories, even though there are other characters, there are other things and people, other situations. Like I know I was not a queen, even though I like to think of myself as a queen. I was not the Queen of Naples. I'm not as temperamental and as spoiled as Maria Carolina was. However, that one of my I had lost while I was writing that book as well, and I could completely and totally understand where she was coming from with her issues with France and her sister, because it was also during the pandemic, and all of that coming together, and that emotion that she was feeling and the anger that she was feeling. I was really able to tap into that.
Yeah.
And I think as writers, having that, it's like that's how it works as therapy for us. That's
right,
how
totally
understanding the world and all the crap that is going around us.
And the pandemic messed us all up.
Yeah. Yeah. We are going to be, it's not the lost generation, we are the pandemic generation.
We really are. We really
during
are.
the pandemic.
I go back into Washington and I'm like, God, I haven't been here in, a year. I mean, like I go downtown to get my highlights and my hair, and that's like, that's like it. I'm like, I used to go there every day for work. I mean, it's like crazy. It's just, life just changed on March 16th, 2020.
Oh yeah. It's like when it comes to, I picked up a temporary paralegal job, and I was like, I don't want to leave the house. I want remote. I'm like, I know this is a little bit to demand at the moment, but I don't want to go out into the office. I have no office clothes anymore.
Yeah, no, it's like, yeah. And you just spend all this time, like, like going over your wardrobe. And I was like, oh, I can't leave the house. I mean, I just have like a uniform, and that's it. It's like what I wear all the time, because only the dogs see me all day. So
yeah, the dogs and the husband, that's all that sees me. But I wear jeans, and it's like, okay, jeans and a nice top. That's what I wear. That's what I wear to book events. I'm a jeans girl. I'm going to wear a nice pair of jeans, regardless of the situation. I've always been that way, and now I'm an adult, and I can do that because I'm an eccentric writer. I'm going to use that as my banner, no matter what happens. Why are you doing that? I'm an eccentric writer. Why aren't you dyeing your hair? I'm an eccentric writer. These are things that I'm gonna do.
Trying to get into a character's mind, my headspace right now. It's all in the name of research.
Exactly.
Well, I know that we said roughly half an hour, and we have turned into basically an hour. But that's why you use roughly, so it gives us that wiggle room. But thank you so much for just making time for us and coming to hang out. And you have to come back.
I got three more books.
3 more books.
4 books get you here to Old Town. I love it.
I thought we were going to up it to 10, Michelle. Are we sticking with the 5?
I think maybe starting now, because we had Constance on before, so she has already established herself in the 5-book.
I know
punch card.
The 5-book realm and universe. I feel like I should get grandfathered in to the 5-book.
Maybe starting, new authors starting now they'll get the 10 book punch card.
I love it. So cool.
But so congratulations on Pub Day on the 14th. So if you would like to pre-order your copy, if you're listening to this before the 14th, or if you'd like to order your copy if you're listening to it after the 14th, you can check our show notes. As always, you'll find the link to our bookshop on bookshop.org, and you can order your own copy. As always, bookshop.org supports our incredible writers. It supports the podcast, but most importantly, it supports all the wonderful indie bookstores out there. And you did say we can call you Connie before we started recording. So I think you're just Connie now.
I'm just Connie.
And thank you for coming back and hanging out with us, Connie. We had so much fun hanging out with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good to see you both.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.